Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a bonus episode of the Blue Oval Podcast. My name is Garrett Zatlin, and no, the person that you are seeing from my other side, it's not Ben today. It's another longtime TSR veteran. It is John Cusick, our D2 D3 editor here at the Stride Report. John, how are you?
I'm good, Garrett. It was a long weekend. I can say that much. But hey, glad we got some good sunshine. We avoided the thunderstorms out in Pueblo, and I thought it was an overall really fun weekend. So I'm stoked to get here and talk about it. To be honest.
Yeah. I talked to John throughout the weekend. John was actually at the national meet, snapping some photos for us, and also just getting some live scouting and kind of an understanding of what was going on from some of those athletes and whatnot. So, what I wanted to do today, 40-minute episode, let's say, let's just chat about the D2 national meet. I think a lot of our readers and listeners on the D2 side appreciate this podcast whenever we do these at the end of the season. So also just hold us over for the upcoming rankings that we have to close out the season. So let's start by distance, and we'll move up. We'll start at the 800, and we'll kind of go from there. I want to start on the women's side, John. A pretty straightforward finals. Ukeva Beckwith takes home the win. That is done in 2:06. Helen Braybrook, 2:07. Pretty straightforward. Braybrook is kind of the initial leader there, but Beckwith eventually takes over in the latter portion of the race. And then everyone's just kind of bunched together. It's Josie Johnson third, Ariel Wright fourth, Marianne Ledesma fifth, Mackenzie Duck sixth, Kaylee Harp seventh, Taryn Chapko eighth, and Bailey Blank ninth. Just initial thoughts on the race.
Yeah. Really fun race to watch. Both the top two ladies, they negative split in 800 meters at 4,500 feet, which is an impressive thing. But I think a large part of that is just the race strategy that Helen Braybrook put out there. In the preliminaries, she went out in like 59, 58 and kind of just tried to put it to the field. And in reality, that might have hurt her a tiny bit because she tried the same strategy in the final and it just didn't really pan out the way she was probably hoping to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with runner-up finish. Obviously, winning a national title on your home track in front of your home fans is a really cool thing. But Ukavia Beckwith showed a lot of poise. I think you see the senior veteran presence there. She just chilled. I mean, there was no worry in her face. You know, she started out of lane 8. There was nothing wrong with it. She felt fine. Got to outside the lane 3 on the outside, and then closed in 62.5 according to Leon, and that's huge. That's a great finish for her. National champion for her. We knew this was probably coming. She's been getting better every single time, and so to see her walk away with a national title is probably bookends her career with a really good success, and kind of sets her up for maybe some post collegiate action if she chooses to do so.
So Beckwith, I think, was the clear national title favorite, but I think it was also very obvious that Braybrook was going to be her most legit contender. And I think even because of the altitude, is it fair to say that how many of our writers actually chose Braybrook over Beckwith? I think we had a one or two, the three. Is that correct?
I know I chose Braybrook over Beckwith. I think Grace chose Braybrook over Beckwith as well. I really did believe the home track was going to give them a better edge, and we'll talk about the men's 800 here in a second because I have thoughts on that as well. But I really did think it was going to play a bigger role, and I can sit here and tell you right now that a lot of the races going in, I thought it was going to be something the RMAC, an altitude-based conference would have a lot more success in, and I think they did in the 10Ks and 5Ks or whatever, but that didn't really seem to affect any of these athletes from sea level, which is a testament to a couple things. One, the athlete, and then two, the coaching staff for each of those athletes themselves. You have to have a ton of strength to be able to run like that at altitude, especially when you don't train here. And so I think that, we can give a lot of credit to both the coaching staffs and the athletes here over the past weekend.
I want to highlight Josie Johnson. Admittedly, I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about this field. I think, yeah, maybe Chapko could have been a little bit better. I think, you and I were talking beforehand. Grand Valley State just didn't look super sharp. Sometimes they did. Some instances, not so much. They were kind of up and down. Josie Johnson just feels like one of the most reliable runners in the NCAA this year. Like if we had a consistency award relative to expectations, I would feel like I would want to put her there because she's just been so darn solid. And I just feel like if she had extra eligibility, that whenever she's going into the national meet, I'd be like fifth place, fourth place lock. Is that kind of how you feel?
Yeah, definitely. Especially after, and we talked about her on the indoor podcast about how she had a huge indoor meet. She was one of the most impressive runners that I had watched that weekend, and she carried it straight into the outdoor season. She rode that momentum all the way. We had some questions about running, at BYU all the time, not going to some of these California meets. But hey, if you're going to race for a national title at altitude, it doesn't you just got to get a qualifying time, and that's really what it came down to. She's a gamer. She stuck her nose in it. You watch her run that. She tried. She was there. I think there was just a little bit more top end talent in Braybrook and Beckwith this weekend, and that's not a gripe or anything at Josie Johnson. I think her improvement over her 4 years at Westminster has been huge, and she's actually been a big reason as to why Westminster's kind of been on the map the last year and a half. Her and Courtney
Mhm.
McCallendon, they've done a tremendous job. That program's probably going to only get better from here going forward, and I think you can kind of give them the two. They kind of headed that campaign there.
I want to move onto the men's 800 here. We got a lot to talk about here. First off, I love what Richard Newell did. Love it. I thought it was an awesome decision. I don't know if that's what you think. We haven't actually spoken about this yet. I personally love it because I think at this point it's at altitude, it's on Charmin Newell's home track. I think we know West Ferguson can do an aggressive race or a tactical race, but I think that if it was a tactical race, then that puts Charmin Newell at a slight disadvantage in comparison to something more aggressive. He just gave himself a shot, and frankly, 147.21 at altitude, 5,000 feet, you just don't expect your competition to then burst by you and run 1:45.46. I believe that's the fastest 800-meter time on Colorado soil. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the case. Number 3 all time for D2. Um, Before I guess like I actually get into this that was such a thrilling race, but it also like forces me to now like revisit a few things. Usama El Buchebe, Stephanie Cotter, and Dylan Powell. None of them were racing. They all had a scratch. Buchebe had a family emergency, was not able to make it. Cotter was dealing with some minor injuries. Powell, from what I have personally gathered, it sounds like he was also dealing with some injuries. I don't know that for a fact. Subtle signs, though, suggest that might be the case. Again, I'm not reporting that. I mean, when you go into this meet, like, what are your thoughts of like we're not going to have Buchebe, we're not going to have Powell, and we're not going to have Connor? Like what was your reaction when that news comes out and the start list come out?
I think I'm on record telling Marissa in a DM on our TSR channel that I was kind of bummed she wasn't going to be there. She was on family vacation. I quote say, well, some of like the fun of the races have been kind of taken out of it by these three not running, and that's like the worst thing I could have ever said. That's probably the worst take we've ever had in terms of TSR stuff. And so um, this was the race I was looking forward to, whether it was El Bouchabé in there, whether it wasn't. We knew we were going to get something huge with Ferguson and Charmin Newell. I think you would have gotten the same thing with Dylan Powell in the 10K and the 5K, and you definitely would have gotten the same thing with Cotter in the 5K and the 15 had she decided to run it. But yeah, my hopes were a little dashed. I think they are actually much more heightened. I think we saw more. We saw deeper racing. I think we saw a little bit more of that than I think we would probably had Bouchabé been in this 800-meter field. I think you're looking at like a 3-man race. And yes, it was a 2-man race, but in theory, if you go look at these results, it felt like anybody could have gone with Wes Ferguson. They might have run out of gas a little bit, but I had to go rewatch the race. It was when you watched it live, when I watched it again on my phone at Buffalo Wild Wings later that night, I could not believe what I just was witnessing because it did not look like they were running 145 pace. Sure, Sharma Newell got out hard in 50.2, but like that's pretty normal. That's something he's probably done before already. And Wes Ferguson with I think you tweeted out perfectly, Gary, a literal masterclass from the man. I've never seen somebody put together a race plan for 2 laps that seems to work better than when Wes Ferguson does it. And without a minor bump from El Bouchabé in the indoor, we're talking about a 4-time national champion in the half mile and 4 in a row. He's now won 3 of the last 4. So at some point we kind of have to sit here and just kind of admire what we're watching with Ferguson. We've got another year of him, and there's a legitimate shot he could go 2 for 2 next year.
If he does go 2 for 2 next year, but let's say he doesn't get the record. Let's say he runs no faster than this. When we look back at El Bouchebe, who was really only in the NCAA for a year, couldn't do this. I mean, you'd have to say that Ferguson has the resume that you would go back and say, like, he was maybe the all-time great. I mean, or like, let's say this. Have you decided, and don't tell me what the actual result is, but have you decided for the men's rankings who will be over who? Have you decided that if Bachebe will be over Ferguson, or have you decided that Ferguson will be over Bachebe, or vice versa? Have you made that decision? Don't tell us how.
No,
You
I have
haven't.
not.
Okay.
I have not. I was looking at rankings before we jumped on this pod together, and that was I had just started. And I usually start with one, and I was just sitting there staring at my ranking screen, like, what do I do here? And so, there's going to be a lot of stuff to go back and look forward. But man, it's hard to argue with what Wes Ferguson has put together. I know we're only looking at the outdoor season, and Boucher not being there is going to make it, I don't know, tough, but I don't know how. It's hard, man. It's hard to argue against what he just did at 5,000 feet of altitude. It's hard for me to believe that he wouldn't have beat Boucher in this race with the same kind of race strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he's not there, and there's always would have, could have, should have. But right now, man, Wes Ferguson is probably the best half miler we've seen since Thomas Staines, and he's not quite as dominant just yet, I don't think. But he's if he goes 2 for 2 next year, whether or not he gets the record, I will say he's arguably the most dominant half miler in D2 history outside of the. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but um, man, now I'm blanking the school too.
Abilene Christian. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, the Abilene Christian guy. I mean, he probably is the most dominant D2 athlete. Just when you go look at his times. So
Yeah, I'm gonna quickly pull that up just because I want to ensure that people get their name proper, and we at TSR have to do a little recognition there. Let me get it's oh yeah, that's a name. It's Saviri Nidihi. I don't even know. I'm tried. I'm sorry. But it's 1:45.24 is the record. Ferguson was just amazing. Do you like the move from Sharman Newell?
kind of, I get why he did it. And I had some conversation this weekend about why the CSU Pueblo athletes have kind of continued to do this. We saw Yasmin Hernandez do this back in 2021, where she got beat by Bailey Sharon after getting ran down the last 100 meters. Helen Braybrook kind of had the same thing happen to her. Yeah, it was 400 meters. But basically the exact same thing happened to Sharman Newell. He just ran out of gas for 100 meters. And I don't know if that's because he was tired from the day before or whatever it was. I think it's fine. When you go out there and you make a move that hard in a 2-lap race, I mean, it showed. The rest of the field was terrified. They were not thrilled. The only person that seemed to be comfortable was Wes Ferguson, because I think he might have known that was what was going to happen. And the rest of the field probably didn't know. But, Ruginera, he finished well, 147.92. He had a faster last lap than Sharman Newell. He just wasn't close enough. Same thing with Angel Luera, who was a huge breakout for this weekend for the Dallas Baptist side. And Harry Ross Hughes, he was a gamer. He just went after it in the prelims. And I kind of thought he would go. I was a little shocked he did not go out with Sharman Newell. He seemed like the kind of guy that would be like, yeah, here we go. I also think he's a fellow UK native, and so I think he knows Sharman Newell personally. And I thought maybe that might have been something that he could have used to his advantage. But lo and behold, here we are. I mean, Caleb Tipton, 148.54. That's huge. Same with Sumner and Tanner Meyer. We talked about indoor. Glad to see him snagging an 8th place All-American award there. But I just thought Sharman Newell had a game plan. It didn't quite go to the way he wanted it, but it's the best finish he's ever had in an 800 meter final. So really, should we knock him for it? I'm not necessarily sure if we should.
Interesting. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I like the decision. I thought when he did it, I was like, it doesn't matter, but what happens to him, I just thought the decision was a good one. That was my view. Angel Loera of Dallas Baptist, he had run 148, I believe, one time before the national meet. His only other time that was that fast, it was like 154 was his next best time. He goes into the national meet prelims, runs 150, and then now runs, of course, 148 at altitude. But I think the Dallas Baptist men and women were like, all right, I guess you don't have any questions anymore. But I think it's fair at that time to have those questions. It was one race that kind of blew us away, and we were like, well, what are we supposed to do? So if Dallas Baptist is listening, guess what? All the respect in the world now. We have no more questions. Loera is the real deal. And I'm not going to lie, when I was reviewing the previews Harry Ross Hughes was just not on my radar. Like I know he ran 148 the last chance meet, and he actually ran 149 at the GMAX as well to win that title. But I just didn't expect a rookie to go to altitude, run 149 prelims, 149 at the end. Like, and I think is he a true rookie or is he? Yeah, he's a true rookie. I think. I just didn't expect it. But I have to say, the consistency and the improvement that he has shown this year, very underrated and very impressive.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he was on all of our radars. I had kind of seen, him run well. He won GMAX over Josh Jones from Northwood, if I remember correctly, and just kind of put him on the map. And then he went and won that Lee University Last Chance meet, which was a huge confidence booster for him. And I'll tell you what, I watched him celebrate both the prelim and the final. And I'll tell you what, Harry Ross Hughes was jacked up for finishing fifth. He was stoked. And, it's a testament to just going out there and putting yourself in the middle of it. I think that's what he does as a racer. That's his style of racing. And we saw that in both the prelim and the final. And you walk away with the fifth place All-American trophy. I don't think he'll change that anytime soon, especially coming from a school in Lake Erie where I don't know how many people he runs with on a regular basis, but I imagine he's probably training alone at this point. And to be that successful on your own is a tough thing to do. And then you come out and you prove it, in arguably the hardest stadium to do it at, 5,000 feet on the biggest stage in front of everybody that maybe is like, who is this kid? And it was just nice to watch it. You see people accomplish the things they've set out to accomplish. And it's a really cool thing to watch, more from just an analyst side, but more as like an actual track fan side of things. I think there was a lot of that this weekend.
Moving to the women's 1,500 meters, we got Celine Ritter winning in what was just basically a jog fest, and then everyone kicked really hard for 100 meters, 200 meters. That's the story. I don't think we need to go into that too much. But in terms of Ritter, she starts the season now maybe a little slow. She had been absent for a while. When we're talking about her in late March, let's call it early April, before she had really gotten going, was there ever a part of you that thought Celine Ritter can win a national title this spring?
In March, no, I did not think she had the chance to do that. That was one because of what she had posted in early March and what we had expected her to post. Two, that was part of both Lindsey Cunningham, Brianna Robles, and Stephanie Cotter being in the way of the three races that she maybe could potentially contest at the national meet. And I think, I don't know if she beats Stephanie Cotter, if Stephanie Cotter is in that race, but she wasn't. She's a national champion. I did not necessarily think it was. I think she's the best talent in that 1,500 meter field, if I were to put it that way. When you take Stephanie Cotter out of there, I think once she was gone, it was like, okay, this is now Celine Ritter's race to lose. And so you walk into the weekend like that, thinking that, and she's so smart, she's so good. Her and Coach Caleb Morgan have done a wonderful job over there in terms of learning how to race properly when you're trying to win a national title. And I think if you go watch her 1,500 meter race, you see a like a really, really strong race from her in terms of making sure she's in the right spot at the right time. She closed in 62. It's a second faster than anybody else in the field. That's Katie Fankhauser there. It was never really a race down the last 100 meters. So it's a testament to her being just a veteran at this point, in my opinion. She's been in so many of these races that she knows when people are going to go. And when you don't have somebody like Stephanie Cotter who's going to try and go run 4:10 in the final, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of sit back and use your natural talent like that.
I think those are all really good points, especially because like the veteran status. Because you look at Katie Fankhauser and you look at Leah Taylor, right? Like Leah Taylor's a freshman, kind of inexperienced. You look at Fankhauser; she's absolutely new to this level. One of the biggest breakout runners of D2 on the women's distance side this year. And yet, I think it was Fankhauser who was like the only one who like wasn't just caught sleeping, and she was the only one who took an initiative, and she was the only one who like kind of anticipated the move from Ritter almost. It's like she was like one step ahead of everyone. And again, didn't get the win, but I just thought the way she timed a few things in terms of where she positioned herself, where she made her move, I thought it was really surprising and really complimentary of her RMAC title. RMAC title? She won the RMAC title? Yeah, earlier this year. Her consistency, improved times. It was just very refreshing. And, you take then a look at Leah Taylor, a freshman. She's been sneaky good. She's been really good this season. I think this was complimentary of that. And I don't think anyone in the All American spots just had a bad day. I think it was just a tactical race. I think if you just said, like, hey, I think Peterson to McCallendon and everyone in between, they're just going to finish between that 4 through 8 spots, I don't think anyone would have been surprised. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. Those are all names that you kind of anticipated to be there. When we looked at rankings, there might have been a few names that you could find a kind of flip there, but that's what happens when you have a 12-person field. But I mean, out McAllendon, Headland, O'Malley, Bear, Peterson, they're all ranked, right? They're all inside our top 25 rankings. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that reads our rankings or kind of sees what we talk about on a regular basis to see those 4 women in the final 4 spots. I think the biggest surprise of this field is honestly Leah Taylor, because she is a freshman and she was the last. I think she was the last qualifier into the final, and she's one of the last qualifiers into the national meet, if I remember correctly. And so it just really wasn't. We weren't sure what we were going to get from her, but she closed in 64, and that's huge. She's also run, I think, 1640. She was the first one out in the 5K, and I want to touch on Katie Finkhauser here. Just from I want to put this out there. Me and my dad are chatty Cathys when we get to these meets. And so, he ran into Katie Finkhauser's dad, and we were chatting. Katie Finkhauser is like a youth national elite kayaker.
Wait, a kayaker?
Yeah, kayaker. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
awesome at it. She said her dad might go back, just kind of depends, but like she's really enjoying running. And then I was talking to my dad this morning. Fort Lewis is adding an indoor track season next winter, and so
Oh, we're breaking news.
yeah, we're going. Yeah, breaking news, right? We're going to see Katie Finkhauser, on the indoor circuit. I think we're going to see her probably run, the mile. You're going to see some 3Ks. Katie Finkhauser ran 2:08 2 weekends ago. It's not like she's slow or doesn't have any kind of foot speed, and so I think she just needs a couple more tactical national championship style races, and I think you're going to see her probably as much as you were impressed, Garrett. I think you're going to see her race even a little bit better when she gets around more national caliber athletes like this.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one championship race, but it's also not. She also won the RMAC title. Like, I can't just ignore that.
Mm.
And it's just really rare because someone who's breaking out and shows great fitness, it's very rare that they then consistently show high level understandings of racing IQ, positioning, when to make moves. It doesn't happen, especially when your other sport's been kayaking. Like that, two very different sports. You just don't have. That's so cool. I'm glad you told me that.
Yeah.
So I'm so impressed with her. I feel like I know who I'm voting for most improved, or yeah, most improved. We'll go with that. We'll see what happens. I had to actually look at the candidates, do some math here. I always think I know like who the most improved is, and then everyone kind of changes their votes on me last minute. At least on the D1 side, D2's been pretty good. So, any further notes that you wanted to make here? I think Kaylee Peterson, Kaylee Byer, super reliable. Claudia O'Malley, I think we're still waiting for her to be that national title contender, but she's just as reliable as an All-American as anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't have anything more to add. Do you have anything else?
The biggest takeaway here is seeing Eleonora Kurtabi finish dead last in that heat. And I think that's just more of a testament to she had run 3 times prior to that, and 2 of them had been over barriers, and she just didn't have, 71 second last lap. She just didn't have a kick. It's not like, I think we kind of expected her to fight for that title. I thought she might have been the biggest challenger to Celine Ritter at the end of the day. But, when you choose to do races prior to something that's arguably your fastest race of the weekend, it makes it very, very tough. So I think that's the only big thing. But yeah, I don't think that's a knock on Kurtabi very much. Is more so, she's been so consistent her entire career that this is probably more of an anomaly than, who she is going forward.
Yeah, and I think in a tactical race, you would just suppose that this benefits her. Didn't happen. I don't think anyone's losing their minds over it. I just don't think it's happening. But also, if anyone's listening and you hear my neighbors just pounding, on the ceiling above me, sorry. It's been a whole conversation with them. Anyways, let's move on. Men's 1500, everyone stays together, and then they kick really hard. And it was just Luke Julian who made sure to do it first and to do it the hardest and to just make sure that he pumped his arms. Like, that was kind of the game plan. I don't want to say like we root for certain athletes. We kind of do. Like, I'll root for Virginia Tech, right? But I'm always going to give credit to the University of Virginia whenever they run well. And if I think Virginia is a better school, in cross country, like I'll rank Virginia higher, or whoever our team is, like we'll rank them higher. And again, I don't really have any personal investment in this field, but Luke Julian has come so close to winning a national title so many times. He's been so good. And he would have been, I think, one of the best men in D2 history to not win a national title. And he finally gets it. Thoughts?
Awesome. Love it. I thought it was a storybook ending for Luke Julian. We know how good he's been. We've talked about how good he's been and how disappointing it has been to not see him come out on top. I was obviously at the finish line waiting to snap photos of this stuff, and so I was watching them come off the bend at 150, and I saw Coca come in, and I was like, "Oh man, Julian doesn't look like he's in a good spot. He doesn't look like he's in a good spot." And then before you know it, I'm looking through my camera lens, and I'm like, "Wait a second, that's Luke Julian in front. No one's going to catch Luke Julian. Luke Julian's going to win a national title. Okay, this is cool." Like I thought it was really cool, and you could tell it was like the weight was lifted off of his shoulders. He had people coming up at him and congratulating him. Great race from him. Another tactical, masterpiece. I really do think it is. When it comes to altitude like this, if you come look at this result list from 1st to 11th, it went from 353.98 to 356.75. One misstep and you go from 1st to 11th, and that's insane. And so to see him be able to hold off this field on the inside rail, by the way, talented athletes, Miguel Coca, you know how good he's been. Simon Colati's been awesome this year. Jared Gregoire, I skipped him just now because I want to talk about him in a second. Charlie Donat has been awesome for his entire Simon Fraser career. Hamza Shahid, we know how talented he is. Jagger Zalatoff has shown us that he's going to be a very good UCCS miler here in the next couple of years. And then Tyler Nord has already proven how good he's been just as a true freshman. So to see him hold off this field and win a national title in his last ever race in an Ortega uniform, I think it's a huge thing for him and his legacy at that school. He was one of the few really talented athletes that has helped them so much in the cross country scene, and has not been rewarded the same way that some of his teammates have been rewarded on the track. And so, personally, I think it's awesome. Again, I try not to have a rooting interest in this. The only team I can say I super have a rooting interest for is Colorado Mesa, and that's for obvious reasons. But this is awesome to see for someone. I think you kind of agree. D1, D3, same thing. When someone tries so hard for so long, and when they finally get it, it's just nice from the track fan side of things. And the analyst things are nice because we kind of validate some things that we thought, which is super sweet. But awesome race for Luke Julian. I thought it was one of the best of his career.
So I do want to get to Jared Gregory in a second. Gregory, we can agree that's his last name? Gregoire?
I think it's Gregoire.
Gregoire?
Yeah.
I did speak French in high school, so I'm going to try my best.
I did not.
I do want to... We'll all try. Listen, everyone who listens to this podcast knows that no one here at TSR can pronounce any names ever. Like I'm Jacob Richlog of Wingate. I know I butchered that, but I tried. Anyways, I just want to touch on Miguel Coca because I think it's very easy to be like, well, he's been great all year. We talk about him all the time, won the indoor mile national title. But I think a testament to how good someone is when they're like in a certain spot in the race and it's getting close and you kind of like tense up like, what is he going to do? Oh my gosh, he's there. He looks like Coca strikes fear, I think, into a lot of like fans who are, maybe rooting against Adam State, or a lot of guys who then have to come off the curve with him or are just behind him. Like he's so dangerous that his presence himself, I think, just makes you super tight. Cause I'm not gonna lie. I thought Coca coming off the turn, I was like, he got it. And Julian just had that a little extra gear. He had one more stride on him. And I just think that, Coca needs to be recognized for how dangerous he is. He didn't win the title, but that I think a testament is to how good someone is how feared they are. Yeah. I think Coca is in that conversation. Jared Gregoire, we're going to try Gregoire. What a season he's had. I think we mistakenly said that he doubled at Brian Clay. I don't think that's true, but he finished third in this race. He ran 3:43 at Brian Clay, ran 1:49 earlier in the season at that point. But man, he's been good. He won the NCAA title in the 800 and the 1500. Comes out here, delivers. I mean, is he a true freshman?
Yeah, he's a true freshman.
He's been just sharp, like clean, sharp. executes at a high level. I mean, don't I understand every reason why you like him.
Yeah, I just you don't see true freshmen run 149 and 343. And you are right; it was back to back weekends, not the same weekend, which makes it I wouldn't say it makes it that much less impressive because it's those two times by themselves are very impressive in my opinion. And I was a little concerned. I was a little confused as to how he was going to come into CSU Pueblo and how he was going to run at altitude against some very, very smart, savvy racers like Luke
Mm-hmm.
Julian, Charlie Donat, Miguel Coca. You can keep going on the list here. And so to see him finish third, and the reason why we were concerned here is because prior to his NCAA championship meet, we watched him run 158 and 357. And so at some
Mm-hmm.
point, you have to go, okay, did you just have like the races of your lifetime and now we're back to kind of where we are? But it feels more like it was a training block kind of situation. You know, he was great. He won the 8 and the 15 at INSIC, took that, translated into great racing at the national meet. And he's probably your favorite. I wouldn't say he's your favorite right now, but he's one of the top 5 for the mile and the 1500 probably next year. And then if he's only going to get faster in the 800, I know that double was incredibly hard. We saw some athletes try it this weekend, and it's not an easy one. I don't know if he'll ever do it, but um, he strikes me as somebody that might be able to handle that with enough strength to kind of potentially make that a successful one. An successful one, in my opinion, is just making the final in the 800. I don't know if
Sure.
what anybody else thinks, but that's my take on being successful doubling.
Okay, we're gonna move off of this. I'm realizing we are never gonna hit 40 minutes. That's okay though. So we moved off of the 1500s. Let's go to the 5,000 meters. We'll go to the women's 5K. I don't really have a whole lot. It was kind of it's the Cunningham Robles show. Cunningham kind of broke it open. Robles kind of came back and kind of made it a little honest, but Ritter was awesome on the double. Third, Florence Iwanajeza in fourth, Doucette fifth, Emily Skolkoff, who's what a meet for her, by the way. We'll talk about her a little bit later. Kira McGill seventh, Natalie Graber eighth, and a few others down the line. I don't have a ton to offer. I mean, I think just the general takeaway, and we can kind of maybe lump this into the 10K conversation, is Lindsey Cunningham is just really good. She's just the best aerobic distance runner in the NCAA right now. Um, I just don't have anything more to say about that. Like the altitude clearly did not bother her, or if it did, it didn't show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's kind of it. And you kind of look at a few of the other women here, like you have a lot of women who aren't at sea level run fairly well. McGill, Colorado Mesa was an All-American. Adams State, Emily Skolkoff, try my best there. Western Colorado, Katie Doucette. Even West Texas A&M kind of is up there. Brianna Robles, of course. So altitude athletes did fairly well, but I don't know what your main, if you have a main takeaway from this race.
No real main takeaway. It feels kind of like what we expected to happen. We knew it was kind of going to be potentially a 3-lady show up front, and it's kind of what it was. The reason why Florence Iwanajeza finished fourth is because she went out with Robles and Cunningham, and she felt the effects of that. Ritter just put together an awesome last 1,200 meters, caught her, but from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1340 or 1643 to 1651 separates the third through eighth. Everybody was kind of battling for that fourth spot until Florence kind of showed back up into the picture. And then again, you're right on with Lindsey. She's just better than everybody. And there's no simpler way to say it than she's just a better runner right now than anybody else in the country at Division II, and that's fairly obvious. I think she did a great job. She let Bree kind of do what Bree wanted to do. She was never panicked in any kind of oh no, Bree's got 10 meters on me, or I feel like I'm stuck in no man's land here. Just laid the hammer down when she needed to lay it down, and walked away with the 5K title, doubling back from the 10K title just 48 hours earlier. So
Um, I want to talk more about Skolkoff. I want to wait for the steeplechase to do so. Is there anything in particular that you really kind of want to highlight? I just don't have a whole lot to offer to this race. I feel bad kind of like skimping out on analysis for a certain race, but I'm just not sure if I have a whole lot here. I think it's very easy to look at outside of the top 10 and to just kind of be like, oh, they could have been higher. They could have been higher. But at some point or another, I look at everyone who's in the top 10 or top 11. And I'm just like, yeah, these are, I could see all of these women finishing there. So that's my just major takeaway. I don't know if you have anything else to offer.
Yeah, real quick, I think Kira McGill and Emily Sholkoff are probably the two where you wouldn't sit there and automatically say they're all Americans, but it's a testament to the type of seasons they've had. We talked about Kira during the indoor season. I think we've probably let Emily Sholkoff or Skolkoff, however we pronounce it, kind of fly under the radar a little bit. And I'm talking about her in the 3K steeple is something that's going to be big. And the last thing I want to talk about is just Claudia O'Malley. I thought I kind of made this verbal talking to a few people at the meet, but I just thought it was a little weird that she decided to double this year. Doubling back from the 15 and then going to the 5K. It just seems like a really weird double that you've never tried before. And you do it at altitude, and I hope that doesn't shine a negative light on Claudia O'Malley, because she has been a fantastic runner for Grand Valley over her young college career so far. And I think, we're going to go to Emporia State next year in the 5K. And I think if she does the 15 5K double, you're looking at a potential, top 5 finisher in both events.
Yeah, again, I think the narrative is O'Malley is probably one of the 5 most naturally talented women in this field. It's just a matter of a little bit more national meet consistency, understanding of tactics, her ability to double back in certain races in a short time frame has been better than others. But she's undoubtedly one of the most naturally talented runners. I mean, her resume is just stacked, and I don't think anyone would argue with that. So let's move to the men's 5,000 meters. We got to chat. Okay. So Awet Baraki opens up this race pretty cleanly. And then how many laps would you say that he kind of opens this up with? Maybe 4 laps to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say 4 laps to go. He opens it up, and it's pretty clear it's him. It's definitely going to be him. And he's charging down the final straightaway. And the announcer, you're watching it live, but on the announcer side, he's like, and there's Awet Baraki. He's going to go. He's going to take home the national title as he's coming through the final 100 meters. And I'm looking at the clock like, Awet Baraki's going to run 13:10 at 5,000 feet. And I was like, wait, what? And then I'm realizing before the announcer does, I go, there's another lap. There's definitely another lap. And you can tell Awet's like a little unsure when he crosses the line. He's like, wait, what happened? And then he continues to run. I feel so awful for Devontae Jet Reynolds. Comes through. He thinks he's getting silver. He's not. I mean, he puts all of that into a kick. Credit to this Colorado Christian guys, Matthew Storer and Josh Pierantioni. They come through the line and they're both like, we're not done. and they grinded it out and kept going. I mean, have you ever seen anything like that at all?
I've never seen something like that live. I've heard about it. I know that a few years back, the steeplechase got messed up at Eastern Kentucky for the wrong start line. There's been talks about, I think recently, like a Mount Sac or Brian Clay 10K missed laps or something like that. And I hadn't heard that one, but I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. You have 8 officials that are on the finish line. They have clipboards. They're counting laps for athletes. And so, talking just to people around the stadium, it sounds like the lap counter was wrong to begin with when the race went off. And so as they were counting down laps, obviously, you're like, okay, cool, we're done. I didn't get to reach out to a ton of people, but, I talked to Reese Smith through Instagram. He said, he came through 10 laps to go, or he knew it was short. He knew around 1,200 something weird was going on and realized that 10 minutes was too fast for whatever they were at the point in the race. And he was like, that just doesn't make sense. And I don't know. I mean, and it's a testament to him. He was not in 6th place.
No, he was not.
He was not in 6th place when that race was technically finished for a lot of those other guys. So he knew something, but you go look at these splits, guys. Devontae Jet Reynolds closed in 60. And then he literally, I was one of the people yelling at him to keep running. Like, Devontae, keep going, keep going, keep going. Dude could not physically run. Like, he literally could not do anything else after that and just basically walked a 3-minute lap. And it's awful, man. It's like the worst thing to happen. There were talks of trying to score this race. I heard that they were going to score it like as the second to last lap as their last lap, which would have never flew for anybody. It was bad, and it impacted the team scores. I believe Adams State finished second on the men's side, finished third on the men's side because they didn't get that 8 points from Devontae Jet Reynolds. I think they ended up finishing third by like 6 or 7 points, and that 8 points probably puts them over the top, depending on how the 4x4 goes for whoever. I can't remember who won it. I think it left them into second place. So there were a lot of things that you could dissect with that. I've never seen it live. I feel for all of the athletes in that field because a lot of that stuff kind of just got ruined a little bit. There's a lot of like, what if, or what would have happened if this happened. And all we get to do now in 10 years is look back at TFers and say, hey, do you remember when this happened? And look how it finished, you know? And so, yeah, it was a crazy race. Allwet was the clear winner here. The fact that he was able to literally close in 73 on his last lap again was impressive enough. But yeah, you could tell he was visibly annoyed and disappointed and upset because, you know, you're trying to win a national title, you're trying to be an All-American, and you put all your efforts in on the second to last lap, and it's worth nothing all of a sudden. So great race. Outside of that, though, you know, I thought Allwet did a great job breaking it open, kind of maybe learned from his 10K a little bit and knew we couldn't let off the gas. And I think it's more the official's fault he let off the gas, you know, but it obviously did not matter. He still walked away with a 4-second win and did enough to make sure he was going to win.
Adam State got third by 3 points. They would have absolutely gotten second had Devontae Jet Reynolds actually finished second, or just within the top half All-American spots, I think. Something pretty close to that. The RMAC ran exceptionally well in this race. They had, what did they have? They had 7 of the top All-Americans, 7 of the top 8 All-American spots, I believe. The aerobic distance events clearly favored the RMAC athletes this year. I think it's pretty clear. Not a ton of surprises. Maybe we thought Tyler Nord could be a little bit higher. Again, it's also hard to like look at these races and be like, you know, like knowing what we know about how this field unfolded. It's hard to like penalize anyone. Yeah, maybe we thought Cameron Allen could be a little bit better. I don't know if we thought anyone else, but it's hard to know because some people just didn't know what the laps were. That's all I have on the men's 5K. Actually, I do want to say one thing. And I'm just going to interject because I noticed this in the 5K, the men's and women's 5K. Of all the divisions that we cover, and I see and edit all of it, right? It's not D1. It's not D3. D2 is the most passionate division. These people are insane. They live, breathe, and just everything about their love for this sport is just so intense. RMAC is the same thing to track what SEC is to football. And listen, so those athletes, like you always hear them on the track, and they'll talk their talk. They have no problem doing so. I just want to shout out Division II though, because like I think that was shown this past weekend. I heard it from the crowd, and I was just really impressed. So shout out to Division II. Did you have anything further on that on the 5K before we move on?
There's one thing about that is Garrett is right on the head with that again. And the biggest testament of that is, I don't know if any of you watched the live streams, but if you go around the last from 200 meters all the way to the finish, you have teams like in the 5K, it was UCCS at the 200 meter mark. It was Colorado Mines at the 150 mark. It was Adams State at the 125 mark. CCU was at the 100 meter mark. All these teams, and they're chanting, you know, at like Adams, or like ore diggers. And dude, it is electric. It is awesome. And the Thunderbolt did a great job, largely because they brought you were able to sit on that grass hill in the top corner or whatever. And it's just an electric atmosphere. It's only something you gotta witness, whether it's an RMAC cross country meet, whether it's the D2 national meet, because you get a lot more of that. But you're right, Garrett. These people love this sport, and it is it's their lifeblood, and so it's just fun to see them come out and support their teams like that. And it's probably the same way in other places, you know, like when Texas hosted, etc. But it was really cool to see.
Yeah, they also are the ones who chirp us the most on our DMs. So I'm gonna leave that alone. Let's move on to the 10Ks here. I'm gonna go back into these results. Women's 10K, Cunningham, again, it's very straightforward. Lindsay Cunningham, 33:55. I believe the fastest 10K time on Colorado soil, which is wild. beats Brianna Robles by about 13 seconds. It's Florin Unajeza, Katie Doucette, Zoe Baker, Jenna Ramsey, Precious Robinson, Elizabeth Walmsley, and then a slew of names that really is just, it doesn't really surprise me. Like, again, and I hate to be just skipping over these women's races because, I want to be as balanced as humanly possible in terms of our analysis. Um, but I don't really have a whole lot to offer. I will say that I think the cheering from the D2 side was actually most intense for this race. That's like where I really heard it, which I loved. But I don't really have a whole lot to offer. I mean, I don't know if you have like any major takeaway from this race.
No, not really. Brianna Robles did try to break this open, and I remember audibly also saying this is slightly unfair if she just gets to run away with this because she's probably been practicing running X amount of pace, whatever. But Lindsey Cunningham did a tremendous job showing one, poise, the ability to compete, and the ability to handle altitude when she's been pressed. Like her back was a little bit up against the wall, I would say. She was in no man's land for a little bit. And I really want to highlight Jenna Ramsey, and I know Holly Mosier didn't finish as an All-American here, but those two girls, Jenna Ramsey and Holly Mosier, were running 85-second laps from the gun. They were not part of that chase pack at the beginning. Jenna Ramsey wound up 6th in this race. Holly Mosier ended up 11th. And it's just kind of a testament to Colorado Mines and how they teach their athletes to race when they know a race plan, how it should go tactically. I was really, really impressed with them. But you hit it also, same thing. All these athletes are kind of names that we expected to be there. Camilla Soja or Soya, however you pronounce her last name, might have been the one that's kind of the outlier here, but that's because she's from Nova Southeastern, and we weren't really looking at any Florida schools outside of Embry-Riddle to kind of be part of our national picture this year. So, but I thought she had a great showing of 35:41. Just kind of fell off the wagon a little bit, or she might have been 8th instead of Elizabeth Walmsley there.
Great analysis. Yeah, I think the back end of this field was like a little bit better than maybe would give it credit for. Like Anisek and Reina Perdres and the Colorado Mines duo of Maxon and Moser. Soja had a great race. Walmsley is like very quietly a really good championship runner, or just like high IQ. Just kind of quietly knows what she's supposed to do in these situations. She's not perfect. She doesn't have the up end firepower that a Ewan Ajeza or Doucette or Baker does. But she's solid, and I just respect her positioning, her ability to execute, and just get these back into All-American honors. So, anything further that you want to note here? Also, let's put it this way: what is Lindsey Cunningham's overall PR? Let's ignore altitude. What's her overall PR in the 10K next year?
32:30.
I don't totally hate that. I think that's a fairly.
Because I don't know her PRs off the top of my head. Are you looking at them?
I'm looking at. Let me pull it up here. Her 10K time is 32:43 per PR, and her 5K is 15:41, and then she just ran that 33:55 at altitude here. I'm looking at the all-time list for Division II. It's the all-time record's 32:08. She, Sylvia Mosqueda of Cal State LA in 1988 ran 32:28, and now it's Cunningham at 32:43. So remind you think 32:30?
Yeah, but knowing that she's run 32:41, I'd say like 32:15. I think there's 30 seconds there next year probably.
Yeah, I don't I think you said 32:30, and I was like, that might just be her like floor.
Yeah.
So she's insanely talented, and I remember Brett interviews her lane 9, and I'm like, where is she going to go? Like, is she going to grad transfer? And I think she might, and if she does, she could be, a game changer for the right school. So let's move off of that 10K. I think we're heading to the men's 10K. John Lucas Becker, 29:47, Awep Araki 59:59, excuse me. And then it goes Loex Comparin, Matthew Storr, Josh Pierantoni, Steve Goldie, Aaron Orr, and Paul Knight, as well as Duncan Twaine in 9th place there. Again, another RMAC, like really sweep from 2 to 9 there, which was super impressive. Awep Araki kind of the first one to break this race open. John Lucas Becker reels him in, and then eventually gets a pretty significant gap that just wasn't going to be covered. I think we realized that Becker could win this race in a variety of scenarios. And I think he was even picked by one or two of you to actually win. You kind of go through down this list. I can't say I'm super surprised. I think maybe Aaron Orr wasn't one of my expected guys to be in this All American mix. Steve Goldie, Paul Knight, but it's also like it's a 10,000 meter race at altitude, and like you really kind of look at the back end. Like I guess I can't be too surprised about it either. So thoughts on Jan Lucas Becker, excuse me, um, and then just the RMAC dominance here.
Jan Lucas Becker's race was one of the grittiest things I have ever watched and on a live track. I thought he was out of it as soon as Baraki broke that race open. I thought he was going to slowly go back, kind of grit it out to finish second. And I remember listening to the PA announcer talking about trying to chase Frank Shorter's, Colorado soil record. And they were talking about Baraki. And I looked up when he said it, and there was only 3 seconds between Baraki and Becker. And I was like, that feels really weird. It seems like this race has already been decided. And then you look up in 2 laps and Becker has made his way back into it, passes Baraki. And then the next thing you know, it's over. It's literally Becker is just running away from Baraki, and Baraki has no chance. He's looking back. He's trying to make sure there's nobody gaining on him for second. And you could realize it was just a battle of wits at that point. And, Jan Lucas Becker is a gamer, man. He goes out there, he grinded at altitude and realized, hey, I've got some stuff left. I'm going to try and make it happen. And he made it happen. And then the RMAC dominance is something I think we've talked about leading up to this meet since we found out it was in Pueblo. And so this doesn't really surprise me. I picked Loix Comperin to finish second. So to see him finish third, I thought was a pretty sweet thing for him. Matthew Storer and Josh Pierantoni have been tremendous for Colorado Christian. Stephen Goldie from MIT, he's settling in at Colorado Mines perfectly fine. Aran Arar, I think he might be out of eligibility. It says he's a senior on Leon. We'd have to go double check, but it's a nice race for him. He's a very talented. He's just never really put it all together. Mm-hmm. When the perfect storm comes together, sometimes you see stuff like that. And I think Aurora is kind of one of those people. And then Paul Knight. Paul Knight's the guy I kind of want to highlight here. He's a redshirt freshman for Colorado Mines. He was part of their cross-country squad. He ran 14:06 indoors, I think. Probably 14:04, 14:05 outdoors. I can't quite remember the exact time, but this is a huge result for him. Basically, he's not going to replace Dylan Powell, but basically they just pick him up and say, okay, now you're in the middle of our pack instead of at the back of our pack, and we're going to start over and we'll see what happens. And this is huge for him. I think that's going to be a huge confidence boost for him. It should lead to a great summer of training, and I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Knight was a top 3 runner for Mines next year on the grass.
We also have to remember they'll return Daniel Appleford as well, who has likely been redshirting for a series of seasons right now. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything further to mention? I really like Storer and Pierantoni. I like what they did, but Becker just looked prepared. He looked sharp. He just looked like he knew what he was doing. He looked prepared, and I just respect that. Anything further on this race before the steeplechases? Cool. Let's go to the steeplechase here, women's steeplechase. And I, for a moment, just freaked out because I saw the prelims there. Let's go to, where is that race? There we go. Women's steeplechase. Shocker, Eleonora Katabi. I think probably, I'm trying to figure out, would there be anyone who was a bigger favorite this weekend than her? I don't think so, right?
It maybe would have been Powell had he run, but
maybe Reese Smith.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd still take Kurtabi, but maybe Reese. Kurtabi, 10:22. Allison Beasley, great run from her. 10:24. Emily Skolkoff, who we're definitely going to be talking about, in third. Natalie Graber, fourth. Morgan Hikes, fifth. Ava O'Connor, sixth. Ashley Corcoran, seventh. And Amanda Monsplair, eighth. I don't really know if we have to talk about Kurtabi. She's great. She's talented. She's at the front of this race. She dictated it. She pulled away. No one responded. I just don't have anything further to say about Kurtabi. Beasley and Skolkoff. Beasley has been very good this year. She's been nationally competitive. Don't know if I would have, placed her as a silver medalist on the national stage. Just a great run, and she's been so consistent. I think you said it, and I don't want to take away your point, but I believe you said this is her 4th steeplechase race ever, correct?
Yeah, she run 4 and 3 in uniform. This was her 3rd in uniform, from what I understand.
Like, and that's really impressive. That's super impressive. And the fact that she's doing it at altitude, now granted, she's from Western, so it's not as big of a deal. Really impressive stuff there. It makes me like wonder, like, what can she do when she's like 2 years into this? And like, she's still super young, high upside, very scary stuff there. Emily Skolkov, however, finished third in this race, and she was also what, fifth? Sixth? Where did she finish in the
I
that
think it
5K?
was 6 in the 5K, but
She was. Well, let me double check here. She was sixth in the 5K. She's a sophomore. Third and sixth. It's one of the best doubles outside of like the classic like Najeza, Cunningham, Robles, right? Like kind of outside of that group. Ritter as well. Doucette, I guess. Well, I don't know what Doucette also ran the 10K. Anyways, not important. I mean, Skolkov has been good. Like she's been competitive. I think we've kind of seen her as like, okay, she's in that next era of like Adams State runners. Like once, the Flanagan sisters had left, once Cotter now is expected to leave, once, you see a few other Adams State women who are, nearing the end of their eligibility. But Skolkov, I knew she'd be good. I didn't think she'd be this good, this fast, and be this reliable at this age. That's my major takeaway.
um 100% what I was going to say. I'm going back and looking through her results, watching her run 16:16 and 10:27. Kind of just was one of those things that we were like, that's an Adams athlete. They ran fast. That's great. What are they going to do in a national meet when they're not named Brianna Robles or Stephanie Cotter? And that's
Yep.
what it came down to. We now know what we have in Emily Shulkoff. Um, Not a great showing indoors when she finished. I mean, she finished 8th in the 5K. That's great. But, 9:45 in the 3K, doubling back, that's tough. It's really impressive for her to run 10:27 and then go run 10:28 at altitude to finish third at the national meet. I think that's her best race. I think that will be her best race moving forward. And I think she will be, a top end scorer for Adams State kind of moving forward. They do need to revamp a little bit if all those athletes are leaving after this year. And that I think she's kind of the head of that group here.
Um, I'm just kind of looking through some of this here. Ashley Corcoran, Amanda Montblair, Montplaisir, reliable All Americans. Just seems like that's what they've become. Natalie Graber, I think we expected a little more firepower from her, but still a solid result. I think she was also doubling as well. I think we also expect a little bit more from Ava O'Connor, but she's just another one who's also pretty inexperienced in the steeplechase. So I think she's also one of the more naturally talented and dynamic athletes. Like I think when you think of super dynamic women in D2, it's like Ritter, it's Kurtabe, I'd probably throw Ava O'Connor in there as well. Um, maybe Chapko if you want to move up to cross country and things of that nature. So on and so forth, but Braybrook as well. But overall, I can't say I'm too shocked. I thought maybe Casey Ripma, maybe Marissa Diatri, but outside of maybe like Skolkov, I don't know if I can really take a look at these All Americans and say that there's a ton of surprises.
I would agree with that. I don't think there's too many in here that I would, if you were to tell me at the end of the day and I'd never seen the race, that these were your top 8 women and I saw the national leaderboard, I'd say, yes, that kind of checks out in terms of the preliminaries and the finals and how it felt more like a tactical race. I know she ran 10:22, but when you watched it live, it really felt like a tactical race until Kurtabi was like, okay, it's time to go. And then you could just kind of see Beasley didn't really know what to do. She's so young. Sholkoff kind of the same way. She's just like, well, I'm in third. Like, I guess I'll just try to finish third and, kind of make my way up. And again, it goes back to Graber. She's still a sophomore. It's not like she's this super experienced veteran savvy. And that's according to Leon here. So I'm looking at this. So if I'm wrong, I apologize. But that she's still relatively young when it comes to her racing at this kind of level and in this event. She's not super experienced in this event, and it kind of, I think, might have shown a little bit when you get up against somebody like Kurt Hobby that basically is like, I know when I want to go, I know which hurdle I want to go when I get over it, and etc. So that said, the steeplechase final in like 3 years, that thing's going to be sweet, and I can't wait to see that guy.
I'm trying to look. Did you get 7 out of the 8 All American correct in the men's race? We're going to move to the men's race now. Spoiler. I'm moving to the men's race here. Reese Smith takes home the win, wins by 5 seconds. Albert Hesse Then go Clement Duego, Caleb Futter, Nixon Career, Isaac Prather, Ben Aarons, and Michael Grabowski. And I'm realizing you missed two of them, so I lied. Anyways, two? Maybe one. Who knows? All right. But anyways, it's just a very straight. I think that's just to show though that the men's steeplechase were very straightforward. You kind of look at all the names. It's like, yeah, like these were the guys we expected. I think Marissa got 7 out of 8 correct. I think did Grace get 7 out of? Yeah, she got 7 out of 8 correct. So like I kind of look at this, I'm like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be, like blown away about. Like Albert Hesse, I think is definitely the big winner here relative. I mean, Reese Smith is great. His double was awesome, like truly like so dominant. Duego just never looked super sharp, didn't look the same this year. I think something's up that we're just not familiar with. Solid, fine race from Futter, and then everyone else was like, yeah, these are just the better guys.
Mhm.
So I want to like say more about this, but I just don't think I have anything more to offer for a race that was very chalk.
Yeah, pretty much. Once Reese Smith made his move, it was basically who's going to grab second, and Albert Hesse did a good job. Fun fact about Albert Hesse, he's a Nordic indoor skier, so he doesn't compete in indoor. That's why we haven't seen him for like 4 months. He just goes and competes in Nordic. I think he's a part of their national champion team over there at Western, so he's got a huge aerobic base. It's going to be good if
What sport does he do?
Nordic skiing.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I I thought you said Nordic indoor skiing, and I was like, they have that?
if all the places would have it, Western would have it, just so we're clear.
True.
So, but yeah, I mean, just that alone tells you he got a huge aerobic base. The really big question about him was, could he cover barriers very well? And clearly that has been answered, and he will be a problem moving forward. But talk about, hey, this is Western Colorado here, man. That's Steeple University.
Yeah.
People try to take it away from him, and it stays there. It will probably stay there for as long as Coach Michelle's there, or Michael. I'm gonna get ridiculed for that. That sucks. Uh, that said, as long as she's still there, man, I just don't see how they're not going to have a strong steeple talent because she's number 2 in their school history. She coached Alicia Konachek. She knows what she's doing over there. It's very, very obvious. 3 All-Americans. It's really about it. Hesse's probably the best, maybe the biggest surprise, but given how he ran earlier this year, it didn't seem like a crazy thing to say, oh, he's not a top 8 guy. He's clearly, from Western, talented. And so, but I thought it was nice to see, people like Caleb Futter. He closed in 63. I told you this. I thought it was a great finish to the race for him. That's a really gutsy finish like that at altitude. Isaac Prather, Ben Aarons, and then Michael Grabowski. I thought all 3 of them put together really fine races to kind of get in there. Grabowski's a nice story because he was the last one in by like a 10th of a second or something like that into the final. And so to see him finish 8th after transfer from Arizona, I think is a really solid, finish to his career.
John, well done. That's all I have. You had an awesome season. The D2 team had an awesome season. Remind me, are rankings coming up, and then are we doing end of season awards? When are we doing all that?
Yeah, so I think we've planned for Division 2 rankings tomorrow. We've got Division 3 rankings on Wednesday, if I remember, and I have my days in the week correctly. And then I think we're going to do end of season awards once D1 Nationals finishes up, and that will, we'll get all those. I think all 3 of those out together is kind of what our plan is.
Cool. John, your service to the D2 running community has been outstanding. We appreciate your thoughtfulness, your insight. Thank you so much. Everyone, hang tight. We have rankings. This is coming out either Monday night or Tuesday morning. I'm not sure yet. So hang out for rankings this week. I'm going to try to get another Lane 9 interview. Go check us out on YouTube. I'm going to put this there as well. Ratings and reviews, Apple, Spotify, all that jazz. We got D1 previews coming up, the D1 National Meet. Very exciting stuff. Also, go take a look back at our predictions, D2, D3, D1 regional predictions. How did we do? Go check those out. There's a lot going on the site. So, John, until next time, have a good one.
Thanks, man. You too.